outside of Florida A&M, there isn't a game on the schedule that I think they can win. I don't think they can beat Florida State. I don't think they can beat Pittsburgh. They can't beat Georgia Tech. And so you start to think, what is the path back? I don't know that there is. How do you go out and recruit after your first year, you go 1-31? How do you recruit that? You've got resources, you've got brand name, you've got history, all this great tradition. You've got Donovan Mitchell as one of the marquee players in the NBA as a product of your program, which of course we all know is a big selling point, is to be able to say like, hey, this guy comes back a lot. He gives us gear, all this stuff. You've got Jack Harlow as this guy who has become a big figure in the music industry, comes back all the time and is big with Louisville basketball, loves Louisville basketball, all this Adidas money, all this stuff that Adidas does for you. You've got a new AD that wants to really usher in a new era of NIL stuff and has on the football side. But your basketball team, at the end of the day, you got to show people you've got some tangible things here. And instead, you might be selling.
That's what I think those are tangible things, right?
Like those are all tangible things, but you can't recruit kids to come play for a guy who went 1-31. Can you?
No, I trust me. I get that. I do. There's, for the most part, I agree with you. Where I would push back is I think the combination of selling what Louisville can be when it's at its best with the fact that Kenny Payne does have relationships and he has been known to be a guy that can pull in a recruit, right? And combine that with the NIL money that you could potentially get and saying you could be the guy that takes Louisville basketball back to the top. And do you know how much you will be loved in this city, by this community, by this university, by this alumni base, if you are the guy to take them from 1-31 to competing for ACC titles again? I think that when you you want to stick with the Indiana comparison, look at a guy like Yogi Ferrell, right? Look at that recruiting class. I think it was him. I want to say like no, it wasn't Christian Watford. Maybe Jordy Hulls was in that group. I think Cody Zeller was in that group. That group of guys that took Indiana back from the depths to winning Big Ten titles. Those guys are going to be legends in that state forever. They're going to be heroes in that state forever, no matter what happens. And I do think that, to me, that is the recruiting pitch. Now, that means that it's going to be a slow build. You're not going to go out there and get the 4 best players out of the portal, 3 top 25 recruits, and all of a sudden next season you are a top 25 team. So if you're a Louisville fan, I think you kind of have to strap in for the long haul here. But to me, that is the recruiting pitch, right? And I do think that that's going to appeal to players. I mean, look, Louisville's Louisville, right? Just because you go 1-31, you still have that brand appeal. At least I think you would, right? But it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be something where you just snap your fingers and you flip the switch. And my big question is Kenny Payne the guy to do that? I don't think that we can have any opinion on what his ability is to coach a basketball team on the floor right now, because I think that this team is just completely and totally and utterly flawed. When you have one guard on your roster, you're never going to be able to win basketball games. That's just the bottom line, right? When you are bringing in Masterpiece Son, who couldn't see the floor for Tennessee Tech or Tennessee State, where the hell he was before, and asking him to play like legitimate minutes, you're just never going to win basketball games. You know, we called it the year of the big, right? But if you go back and look at teams that have won the national titles, I think the only one that didn't start 2 point guards was the Villanova team in 2018, the last 12 years. Think about the team that won it from Louisville. They started Russ Smith and Peyton Siva. You basically have 2 point guards on the floor, right? So it's when you don't have that guard play, you can't run an offense. When you can't run an offense, you don't have enough talent to be able to make up for the fact that you can't scheme anything. You can't run anything. You can't get points out of sets. It's just you so severely limit yourself. And to me, that's the biggest criticism on Kenny right now. Like, how do you not see that coming, man? Like, how do you not go get anybody out of you're fucking Louisville? You can't go out there and just find one guy that probably should be at like an Appalachian State as opposed to playing in the ACC. You get 3 guards out of the portal that should be mid-major players, put them on this roster and have them like just be able to be functionable. And you have enough talent in the front court that you're like a 10-win team as opposed to a 1-win team. And if you're a 10-win team here, I think everybody's understanding is like, yeah, it's a new season. You just got rid of all these sanctions. You just had this hanging over your head. You just had a coach leave on you in the middle of the season. It's going to be a rebuild. And everyone's like, yeah, okay, I get it. it is what it is. If you are competitive in games against like Georgia Tech, you're going to be fine. If you're getting smoked by Cincinnati, like, come, that to me, that's
the problem. Yeah, here's the thing, Rob. I think all of those things sound great. They had the spring. They whiffed on everyone they went after. Whiffed. All those guys are off playing somewhere else. You literally had 40 minutes at one of your guard positions to sell, and you couldn't get any guy in the transfer portal. You couldn't get a single guy. You had 40 minutes to sell. Then you go through the summer. You say, okay, look, roster stinks for this season, but they'll be able to get out on the recruiting trail in the summertime and really get a head start, or not maybe get a head start, but be in a good position for the 2023 class. They keep a kid in it in Caleb Glenn, who was committed prior to this staff coming in, who is Louisville through and through, and I think would go there if I was the coach, but is a good player and is a nice addition to this class. You go out and you get Curtis Williams, who's a guy who is more of like a sharpshooter, straight line driver, big wing, who I think will help them. But he's a guy who you put in a class with 5 stars and you say, okay, this is your guy who will be there 3 or 4 years and he can develop. So those are 2 good recruits. I don't want to act like they don't have anybody in their class, but you had all summer come into the fall. And by the time the visits were all supposed to be coming around, you have had no guards on your campus. 0, none. The guy you put all of the marbles in, or at least the 2 that we thought they were putting all their marbles in, one went to your rival school, Kentucky, after you hired his grandfather, and the other one didn't even come on his visit. He canceled his visit for whatever reason, and now he's going to Texas. So Louisville is going into the spring with this staff that is supposedly a big-time recruiting staff with all these connections, with nobody, again, from the high school side of things, when we were led to believe that was the big reason that they were hired, was to go out and do some big recruiting stuff in the 2023 and beyond class. I think there's probably a significant portion of the Louisville fan base, and you don't want to overstate Twitter and the amount of people on there who are vocal, but there is a significant portion of people who thought literally that the hiring of Kenny Payne meant DJ Wagner as your starting point guard in 2023. Like that's it. And they didn't get him. And then you whiff on AJ Johnson, and now you're like, okay, you're going to go back into the portal and try to do what you couldn't do last year, which is offer up a bunch of minutes to somebody. There's no reason to think that they can do that. There's no reason to think that now maybe the NCAA ruling helps them a little bit, but you've got to you say that, okay, you compare it to what you're watching. And to me, effort, problems, that's coaching. They haven't figured out how to motivate their guys. They don't have 100%
right about that.
They don't have a scheme for the roster they built. They built the roster. They don't have.
That's the problem. The problem is they didn't build a roster that you can scheme for. You have one guard.
Fair. Yeah,
you have one guard.
But figure it out.
You're never going to be able to.